Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Flying Chariots The Rise, where the line between the known and the unexplained blurs a little bit. I am your host, Daniel, and with me is my good friend and co-host, Dustin. And today, guys, we have a tale that will send shivers down your spine and make you question the boundaries of our reality. Today's guest, Linda Sigman, went on a journey years ago into the realm of the mysterious, but not voluntarily. Together with her boyfriend at that time, she had an encounter that they will never forget. A rendezvous with a being known as the Mothman. You've heard the whispers and the stories about the Mothman looming in the shadows. But today, guys, we have a first-hand account. Not only did Linda come face to face with the mysterious Mothman, she was also observed by unknown flying objects on that fateful night. So guys, buckle up as we dive into Linda's fascinating story. A night when the ordinary turned into the extraordinary. Stay with us as we explore the mysteries of that night. But first, let's hear her story in its entirety. Here with us today is Linda Sigman, a wonderful young lady who experienced something of high strangeness. She says she's a psychic with special abilities. You will tell us more about that later. And when I heard Linda's story on the Lost Frequency podcast, shout out to these guys, awesome podcast, Lost Frequency podcast, I knew I had to bring her on our show too, because, like I said, you experienced something very strange. It's a fantastic story about the legendary Mothman and the large orb. But if you don't mind, Linda, please tell us a little bit more about yourself and let us know what happened to you back then.
Okay. I was a shy child. I first saw my first entity when I was 3 years old. I came in contact with my guardian angel. And I was outside playing in the yard and it was raining. And I sat down in some water and was splashing around. And I saw a woman over to my right. And every time I turned to look at her, I couldn't see her. But I learned later that that is who she is. And her name was Rachel. And then when I was 5, I saw a gray entity. I had trouble sleeping, so my bedroom overlooked the Ohio River, so I used to sit and watch the boats and trains and things go by. And I saw this little person walking under the streetlight, and he came up to in front of my house and stopped and walked forward into my house, and I realized later that it was an alien gray. And all the time that I was growing up, I was afraid of robots because I thought that's what that was. That was the only thing that that I could, know that at that age what it might have been. And then as I got older, I realized I had these premonitions and dreams and things that were happening to me, and I didn't quite understand it. My dad used to sit with me and have me to pick different numbers and letters and things. And he put cards on the table and I could pick the suit of the card that was turned over. I could pick the numbers. And then he taught me to, I know this sounds weird, but and that's when I was about 12. And he told me that his mother also had abilities. But it wasn't until I was a teenager that I realized that a lot of the psychic ability came from my mother's side, from the shoemakers. And I did when I was about 15, I started working on my family tree and found out that the Schumakers were from Germany. And I don't know whether I'm saying this right. Alsace, France, near the Alps. And in my family tree was also Sylvia Brown. She was a shoemaker, and I found her in my family tree, and she was a well-known psychic who passed away about 4 years ago. So my mother shared with me as I was a teenager that she was also had abilities. But as a teenager, I was called a witch and, different things because I could hear different people's thoughts and I could feel people's feelings. And so being in a situation where there was a lot of people involved, especially school, it was really hard for me. I was pretty intelligent. I did well in school, but I didn't like to go because anytime there was any kind of a conflict, it was hard for me to process. So I just kind of pushed it aside. And when I was about 16, I had a boyfriend that he was part Native American, and I have Native American on another side of the family. On my mother's side is I'm 7 greats granddaughter of Chief Cornstalk, who is from Point Pleasant. And if you study about the Mothman, you'll hear Chief Cornstalk and different things and how he played a part in that area. So fast forward, my boyfriend comes over to pick me up in April to just go for a ride in the country because all these kids are seeing something. All these people are seeing what they called the bird. It was an entity that followed a lot of people. And in Point Pleasant especially, I think the first sighting was in Clendenin, West Virginia, where there were 3 guys that were digging a grave in a graveyard, and they saw a winged man. And that was the start of it. And that wasn't too far from Point Pleasant. But he came to pick me up, and we were going to go and look for this creature because that's what kids that age were doing because of the 1960, 67 is when it started, and this was the next April. So all through the winter and months and things, different things were happening. So we go across the Pomeroy Mason Bridge and we get over to Mason, West Virginia, which is a very small town. It has a Walmart now and a few other stores. And he said, we used to ride horses over in this one area. So he said, let's go up there on top of that hill and we can stop and sit up there. And it's quiet and it wasn't dark yet. So about 7:15, off we went, and out through the country we went, and we pulled up a gravel road, and it came to a fork, and we took the fork to the left and went to the top of the hill, and we got to this place, which was a big field, just an open field, grassy field, and we pulled in there, and he turned around and faced out just in case someone came along and said, you shouldn't be up here, you need to leave. So we pulled in there and sat, and we're talking a few minutes. And over to our right, parallel with the car, was a line of trees. And since it was springtime, there weren't any leaves to amount to anything on the trees yet. So, you could see through the trees to the mountains and the hills. In front of us, down over the hill, would have been the Ohio River. And then to our left, down over the hill about 1/4 mile, was an old strip mine where they used to mine for coal, but it was abandoned. So we were pretty much on top of the hill away from everybody. And he had a quilt in the back seat. He had just had a birthday in the last part of March. So he said, my grandma gave me this quilt. Let's put this quilt on the hood of the car and get out and sit. See what we can see in stargaze. Well, it was starting to get dark. It wasn't quite dark yet. So we spread the quilt out over the front of the car. And we were sitting there for just a little bit. And it was starting to get dark, and I thought the moon was coming out. Their stars were out. It was really beautiful. And I noticed he kept looking over to his right. And I said, "What are you looking at?" And he said, "Well, there's a big star over there. I've been watching it for about 10 minutes." And it looked odd. It looked like when you see Venus or Pluto or something at night in the sky. It's bigger. It stands out, but not real bright yet. So I said, "Oh, that's a strange star." Well, about that time, it looked like it was moving, but it was just going into itself and then going back out and going in and going out. And then the clouds started rolling, and it was looked like what I would say now a supernova. It just opened up like it was coming out of something, was coming out of another universe or dimension or something. So we were just sitting there watching it, and the sky turned pink and red, and this thing came through the clouds. It was a giant object. Well, it was on the other side of all those trees, and we could see it coming through the trees. And I said, "What is that? That's not that creature, is it?" And he said, "No, I don't know what it is." And it started moving. I said, "That's not a plane." And we watched it, and it moved it looked like it was going about 5 miles an hour. And we were sitting like this, looking back, and then we watched it all come all to our right, and it came out to the road that we had come in on, and it stopped, and I realized it was closer than what it looked. And go ahead.
I was going to say, what was this? What was the size and what color was this object?
It was red. It was about the color of my shirt. If you hold your hand out and make a circle like that, open it up a little bit, it looked like about a silver dollar, old-fashioned silver dollar, about like that. It was huge. And then when it came out and came over to the road, which it had traveled maybe a quarter of a mile, we could see how large it was. And when it got over there, it sort of turned like it to its side, and all we could really see was the bottom of it, and that it was domed. Because when we first saw it, it was a big circle, I would say 50 feet in circumference, maybe. It was pretty big.
Oh.
And we stared at it and couldn't see any lights, was making no sound whatsoever. There we are out in the middle of nowhere, someplace we're not supposed to be, looking for something we're not supposed to be looking at, because my dad said, "You stay away from down there. There's government men and things, and we don't want to get involved in all that." Well, here it come, slowly toward us, parallel, just here it come, right toward us, moving slow. And the next thing I remember, now I want you to remember there's missing time here, and I know what happened. The next thing I remember, I was in the car and on the passenger side, and he was in the driver's side. And I've got all this stuff going through my mind thinking, how'd I get here? Where's this object? What's going on? And what's happening? It's dark. So my boyfriend's just sitting there. He's just got a hold of the wheel. He's sitting there like in a daze. So I lean out of the passenger window. It's rolled down, and I look up, and all I can see is the underneath of this object. And there's lights underneath of it in the shape of a cross or a T. White lights and red lights are not blinking. The object's not blinking. But the thing is, the thing wasn't very far above our car. 15 to 20 feet up, maybe. But it was so big, I could not see the sky. So he tries to start the car. I go, "What are we going to do?" And he said, "We're getting out of here." He tries to start the car, of course, classic, it won't start. Finally gets started, starts to pull forward, And this creature from the bottom left, my bottom left, flew across up over the car in front of us into the tree line that I was telling you all about. Stopped, turned around, and looked down at us. There was enough light I could see this thing. And it was between 8 and 9 feet tall, did not flap its wings. It had wings that it had back behind it. And if you know who Superman is and you ever saw any of those old Superman movies, how he's up in the sky and he just takes off and he has his wings back. That's how this thing did. And I could see from our lights and the light from underneath of the big object that it was a dark gray, I would say. And it had a head of a man, wings, long wings, and its legs were together as it flew up. And I didn't see a tail or hands or anything at that time. So he's flying out of there and the rocks are flying everywhere. And as we go, the object goes with us. It goes straight down over the hill to the river. And we go to the left and we just about lose it. He's fishtailing on those gravel roads. We're going down over the hill and we almost lose it. Back then we didn't have seat belts. So, you're just flopping all around in the car. And I was busy going, look at that creature. Look at that. Do you see that? And he's like, I saw it. It's a UFO. And I said, no, didn't you not see that creature? And he goes, all I saw was UFO and I'm getting out of here. I'm trying to drive us out of here. And I'm looking back and it's up in the trees. So I said, go back down over hill here and park. And I want to talk about what we saw. So we get down over the hill and there's this little pull off area of gravel off of the little road that we're on to our left. And there's a little road that goes back in there. So he goes back in there. There's no trees around. It's just a flat area. And he turns around and just sort of parks parallel with the road that we came in on, like this. So I said, did you not see that thing? He said, Linda was trying to get us out of here. He said, I don't know what that was, a UFO, but I didn't see anything else. And I said, let's go back up because I want you to see what I saw. I want you to see that creature. I saw that thing. And he goes, I'm not going back up there. We need to just sit here a minute, calm down, then I'm going to take you home. So we sit there a little bit and probably 10 minutes. And we see lights coming up over the hill where we had came from, And we're traveling around the road. It's following the road. And I'm like, there comes a car. We need to get out of here. He said, that's not a car. It was another object. This one was smaller, about the size of a Volkswagen, completely round. And it was following the road, just, and the road turned a little bit, it went. And we were sitting there watching it, but it was only about 3 feet above the road. It made no noise whatsoever. I'm like, that has to be that thing. It's just in another form. I could feel that that it was probably living. I just got that vibe from it, that it just, was trying to communicate. And it got up to where it could stop right straight across from us. And I said, it's found us. We had our lights out and it was dark, but it still saw us. So it sat there a minute and I said, what are we going to do? And he said, right now we're just going to sit here and see where it goes. Of course, it started coming toward us. And I would say it was probably about 40 yards from us, from where we were parked. So it started coming straight toward us. And I'm like, that thing, we escaped the first one. We escaped the alleged Mothman. But here comes this thing. They've sent something after us. I know they have. I'm scared. But yet I'm intrigued and in awe of what I'm seeing. And it comes right up to the car. It gets right to the front of the car and it stops right at the bumper, the front bumper of the car, and just sits there. And if you looked into a fluorescent light, the color of a fluorescent light, a blue-white light, it was like that, but it didn't have any sound whatsoever. You couldn't see into it. And I wanted to see into it. I wanted to see what it was. And he wasn't very happy with me because I wanted to see it. And I said, should we get out? It's like, no, just sit here. Next thing I can remember is it goes up over the car and it fills the car with light, white, bright, white light, and it's gone. So I'm looking at him. I'm on the floor and I'm looking at him and he's slumped over the steering wheel. And I'm like, I think I'm ready to go home now. We look at our clocks and it's like 8:30. We have half an hour to 45 minutes missing time. I'm like, we left my home at 7:15. It didn't take more than 10 minutes to get out there. It was no later than 7:30. We sat there 10 minutes, and here came this first UFO. We weren't underneath of it more than 10 or 15 minutes that I could remember, and it took us 2 minutes to drive over the hill. There's a half an hour gone. What happened? It's like, I don't know. So we go back out the road and get to the main highway in Mason, West Virginia. We go down the road and we go across the bridge. And I'm like, I feel funny. He's like, how you feel? And I said, this was before computers. I said, I feel like my mind's been picked. But now what I feel like is it was either something was uploaded in my mind and my, like they knew things, and then something happened to me during that experience. If you're going across the bridge, you have to turn left to go down to my house. But if you turn right, you go up to the town of Pomeroy, and it has a great big parking lot in front of the river. And I said, let's just go up there and see if we can see any of these lights from where we're at, because they have had to go somewhere. And if you've read the Mothman prophecies by John Keel, he talks about how he and Mary Hyre went into the hills of West Virginia and watched the lights going back and forth. That's what we saw, a couple lights going back and forth. And I said, let's just go home. Well, we turn around. It takes, I'm probably 1.5 miles from home. He takes me down and it's dark. And I notice my dad sitting out on the porch and he runs out to the car. And I think, how do he know where I'm at, where we were? I'm going to get in trouble for being out parked with him in the country. And he said, hurry, get out of the car. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, well, your mother and I were sitting here on the porch about 15 minutes ago, and we saw a big white ball come up over the hill and go over top of the bridge and go towards Pomeroy. And I'm like, that has to be the one we saw. Has to be the very same one. And my mom got up and ran in the house, and she came out and she said, your grandmother was on the phone. She said, run outside. There's at least 2 UFOs coming down your way. So I'm thinking there was at least 2, probably 3 of the little ones and the big one and the creature. Well, I go to school and I only heard of 2 other people having experiences, and it was a pair of twin girls that was in the class below me in school. They had gone for a walk and saw one of those smaller ones above a water tower near their house. But it was on the radio, and I wanted to call, and they had live radio, WMPO radio, and I wanted to call in. My dad said, you just need to stay away from that place. You don't need to go there. So he said, I told my mom. I didn't tell my dad. I was afraid he'd get really upset. I told my mom, and she said, well, just don't go back over there for a while till that thing's gone. She believed me because she had intuition and psychic abilities. So later on that summer, I guess this was 1966, my dad said, whatever you do, don't go down to that TNT area. Now, the TNT area was it was a place where during World War II, they built ammunition for the army for bombs, and they had these bunkers where they stored TNT and the different things in them down there. It's now a wildlife area, the McClinton Wildlife Area. Well, the kids went down there and hung out because that's one of the first places that they saw the what we called the bird. So he said, you stay away from down there. I said, okay. Of course, that was the first place I went. On the weekend, a bunch of us would get in a car and we'd go down and we'd hunt for this creature. So that happened all summer. And of course, he was spotted here and there in Point Pleasant and chased by several people. But I pretty much stayed away, a good bit of the time, except on the weekends because I had school. Well, go ahead a little bit to the next December. And it's about 2 weeks ahead of Christmas. And let's see, I go down to Point Pleasant, which is about 25 miles from where I lived, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And I'm going to go across the Silver Bridge. And that's the bridge that collapsed during all this stuff that goes on. We used to go and sit on that bridge because it would move back and forth and swing, and we thought that was fun. Well, I was by myself in Christmas traffic, and I was stuck in the middle of that bridge, and I had a really bad feeling. It's like, this isn't good, and that bridge was swinging, and I can remember looking over towards Point Pleasant from the Ohio side. I drove across, and I was in the middle, all the beautiful Christmas lights. Well, I finally get across the bridge, and I go in town, and I want to go to this one dress shop and get my sister a scarf she wanted for Christmas. So I drive up to the dress shop, and there's a place right in front. And I think, oh, I'm lucky I got a place to stop. And when I look, there's this weird looking man standing out front. He's all dressed in black. Has a black hat, black shoes, black coat. Just standing there. It's nighttime. It's about 8 o'clock at night. And I'm scared to go in because I don't want to go by that guy. He looks weird. And I'm thinking that's one of the government men that my dad was telling about. And I don't know whether they called him Men in Black back then or not. So I waited till some other people went in, and I went with them. And I passed him just right beside him. And he looked odd. I kind of looked out of the side of my eyes at him to get a good look. So I go in, and he didn't even look like he was breathing. I mean, he just looked like a robot. So I go on inside, and I buy the scarf, and I get ready to go outside. And I told the clerk, I said, that guy's still out there. And she said, I know. She said, I've called the police, and they won't do anything. As long as he's not doing anything, there's nothing I can do. So I went on out. And when I went out of the store, I looked down to my right, and there was another one leaning against a light post that looked exactly like the other one. So I get in the car and I go home. And I think I'm not going to go down there for a while. And this is about, I don't know, the first week in December. So come the 15th of December, I go to school. I come home, and then I wake up that morning of the 15th. I'd had a horrible dream. I dreamed that there were all these people in the water trapped in Christmas ornaments and Christmas packages and things floating in the river. And I heard metal crashing and horns honking and lights coming up from the water. And I wake up in a start, and I come downstairs and I tell my mother I had a horrible dream. She said, "Oh, you have dreams. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just, go on to school. You have those dreams. Forget about it." So I go to school, and we have a Christmas dance that night. So I stay over and start to decorate with the other kids. And our band is supposed to come about 5 o'clock. That's going to play at our Christmas dance. So come 5 o'clock, the band's not there yet. We're like, where are they coming from? Somebody said Huntington, West Virginia, which is 20 miles or so below Point Pleasant. They haven't come. They haven't showed up. About 5:15, someone comes in the high school gymnasium and says, "The Silver Bridge has collapsed." I'm like, that can't be possible. And then I thought about the dream, and we all were crying and praying for most everyone knew somebody that went down on that bridge because we were a small town. So after that, I graduated the next May, which had been 1968. I started working at Ohio University. I got on with my life. I got married. I had 2 children, but I always had problems with, I guess you call it agoraphobia, where you're afraid to go out around very many people. And as the kids got older and they got into things at school, I had to make myself do that. And I thought, there's something wrong with me. There's something. And I tried to find everything I could get my hands on UFOs, and I couldn't find very much on the Mothman because we didn't have internet or computers. And so let's see, in 2002, I think it was, I got the book, The Mothman Prophecies. I think it was when it was, this by John Keel. And I read it. And I thought, that's the story of my life. And I didn't know until I read it that other people had the dream of the packages floating in the water. Mary Heyer, who was the Athens messenger, the newspaper reporter that was down there with John Keel. Now, I didn't remember him being down there, but I remember hearing of an author being there, but I didn't. I was interested in other things. But my psychic abilities started really growing, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I finally, I can't remember when the movie came out. It was quite a few years later. I watched it, and that really, if you want to know about the Mothman prophecies, really what happened, you read the book, because it's more true to life. Mm. So I started wondering what I was going to do. Well, finally got a computer. So, oh boy, that opened it up for me. I started seeking help to find out if anybody was out there that could help me find out why I was having these dreams and having these fears and scared of the dark. And so I found the Round Town UFO Society out of Circleville, Ohio. So I started going to the meetings. And after I'd gone for a few times, a couple of the people said, Well, we have a licensed hypnotherapist here. She's been a therapist, a psychologist for years, and she does regression therapy. And they said, would you do it? We'll pay for it. And I was like, oh, yes, I think that would really help. So she set up an appointment and I went. Now, the Round Town UFO Society is a group of people that meets once a month, the second Thursday of the month at 6:00 in Circleville. And they are a safe place for people that have had encounters like mine. So she gets me over to her office and she puts me under. And I'm wondering, is this going to work? She said, "Do you want to remember everything?" And I'm like, I want to know it all. And she said, "Start where you want to start." So I said, okay. I'm in the car with my boyfriend, and I knew what I had on, what he had on. I had on a blue blouse and a plaid shorts, and he had on a white T-shirt and jeans. I could remember like I was just it was like I was watching a movie. She said, "What's now happening now?" And I said, "Well, we're going across the bridge and we're going into Mason and we're going up Carson Road. And we get to the top of the hill and it's getting dark and we get out and we sit on the car hood and there's this light." And then she said, "Well, what else do you see?" And I said, "Well, it's coming toward us. It's over top of us." And she said, "You had some missing time. Can you think hard what's happening?" And I remembered when my boyfriend jumped off of the hood of the car, when that object was over top of us, that the quilt slipped and I slipped with it to the ground. And I remember when I slipped, the side of my leg got burnt on where the car was still hot because we'd been driving in that 56 Chevy. It was warm. And when I looked down, my boyfriend was nowhere to be seen. And it was like I was in a trance. I looked down and I was sitting on somebody's big feet. And I looked up and the feet were connected, the legs were connected to some kind of a creature. And that creature was what I know was the Mothman.
Wow.
Dang.
And the next, yeah. And I tried to remember, I was trying to scream. I couldn't. It's like I was hypnotized. It's just sitting there. And I was like, where's my boyfriend? Where's my boyfriend? I don't know how much time passed, but I do know that thing picked me up, carried me over to the car, and he was sitting in the car behind the driver's seat. He took him out, put me in, put him back in. And I remember when the door went bang, I was awake. And I remembered the thing flying in front of us up into the trees. And I remember everything since then.
Let me interrupt you right here. I'm sorry. It's so
No,
interesting.
that's it. Most of it.
Okay.
Now.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't want to interrupt you because it was so interesting. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I have a few questions now, of course.
Absolutely.
First of all, the spot where you went with your back then boyfriend on top of the hill, why did you choose this spot? Was it famous for phenomena like that, or why did you choose the spot?
We rode out there a lot on his horse. We would ride together on his horse, bareback out there. And there was a spot out there, which was a flat area. There's a lot of hills and mountains in West Virginia. I think it's the only state where every part of it is hills or mountains. And this area was flat. And he was going to help a farmer that next month, it's May, to do hay. And when you drive a tractor and you cut the hay, I don't know if you're familiar with how that's all done. I lived 50 years on a farm, that he was going out there and he was going to help him with hay. And he just thought it was the top of the hill. We could see the stars. We could see the Milky Way. That thing had been seen not too long from there. I think it was during that summer or spring. It had been seen not too far in Mason. A woman was driving to church one morning, and the Mothman was in the middle of the road, and it just stood and put its wings out. So we were kind of in the middle of the location of where we might be able to see something. And then I knew that my grandparents said that their neighbors, which was about 3 miles northwest of where we were parked, across the river into Ohio, had been seeing these UFOs every morning at 3:00. So we were kind of centrally located between Point Pleasant, Mason, Pomeroy, and Clendenin and Huntington. You know, we were in an area where it was just a good spot to observe.
Okay. And you also told us that your dad warned you not to go up there because there were now and then there were men of the government have been seen there.
Yeah, that is at the TNT area in Point Pleasant. Mm-hmm. That is, see, we were in Pomeroy, and then over across the river was Mason, and Mason was where we had our sighting. Point Pleasant's 20 miles down the river, and that's where the Silver Bridge collapsed, and that's where Mothman was seen a lot, at this place where they made the ammunition. It's called the TNT area. So my dad knew that kids went down there to try and look for it. And of course, after we had our experience up in Mason, every weekend we'd go down there, and kids had grouped together, and we'd sit there and party and watch for, we called it the bird because we didn't know what it was. So that was the area, was called the TNT area, and it's near Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Okay, and it was observed by these government workers, government men, because of it was a dangerous area because of the TNT stuff.
Yeah, it was closed down, but at the time, it closed down when the war ended and everything went into rubble. But some of those old buildings were still there, and all the bunkers were still there, and most of them are still there, and some of them are still sealed with TNT in them. But you can still go in there now. It's a wildlife preserve now. But these guys, they called them the Men in Black. They bothered anybody that had a sighting that they knew about. They'd go to their house and try to get information. And the Men in Black did not appear to be human. This guy I saw, you know what AIs look like now. They almost look human. That's how these guys looked back in the 60s. Their skin had a pallor to it. It was almost but they kind of had oriental features, but their skin was sort of a gray look to it. And they had black hats and black shoes and sunglasses. And I don't know if they called them back then, they called them G-men. I don't know, government men, what they called them. But my dad, he was up on all that stuff. He knew that they were down there. And he said, don't you go down around there. They'll be coming up here and asking us questions. And I don't want to answer any of them. So I didn't. But they seemed to follow people around.
Can you wrap your mind around the thought that they have been there because of the UFO stuff or the Mothman thing?
Yes. They were, if you ever read the Mothman prophecies, and I would suggest to read that, it tells about the Men in Black and how they always showed up unexpectedly and sometimes didn't make any sense when they interviewed people. They went to this lady who had an office down there in across the river from Point Pleasant is a town called Gallipolis. And she had an office down there. She was a newspaper reporter. And they would go in there and stand and ask her stupid questions. And some of the time that didn't make any sense to her. And the author, John Keel, he'll even tell you about it. And of all the, since all this has happened, I've done a lot of research and talked to so many people, and I'm still finding people that haven't come forward that has seen this creature. This summer, I gave a talk about it at a library, and I noticed a girl was crying, and I went over to her and I said, "You saw this thing too, didn't you?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Can you tell me about it?" And she said, when I was, I don't know, 11 or 12, they lived out in the country and they heated with coal. So they had a pile of coal, and she'd have to go out with a big bucket and get this coal and bring it back into the house to heat the house. Well, one evening she went out to get a bucket of coal, and she said that thing was standing out there, and she didn't know what it was. And it just looked like a devil, and it is a creature, and it just raised its wings like this. And she said, I just couldn't move. She said, I just stood there, and I said, I know. I said, it's just like, you don't, she said she was out there about a half an hour. And when she went in, her mother said, where's the coal and where have you been? She said, I don't know. And she told her what she saw, and she made her go back out because she didn't believe her. But that thing was seen by so many people up and down the river before that bridge collapsed. Have you heard of the fall of the Silver Bridge? Did you know about the Silver Bridge collapse?
Yes, I've heard about that. Yeah.
There were people that said they saw it on there. I don't think it had anything to do with it. I think that people that have are sensitives like I am, or maybe have Native American ancestry, because a lot of the people I've talked to, they're part Native. There's some kind of connection there, but I don't think it had anything to do with the fall of the bridge. I also heard a few days before the bridge fell that they saw somebody saw these men in black crawling underneath the bridge, like they were doing something to it. But you hear all kind of stuff, you don't want to believe. Only believe what
If you had to put the Mothman into a category, let me know what it would be. Would you say it might be some kind of alien being, extraterrestrial being? Is it some kind of metaphysical being, maybe, or interdimensional or multidimensional being, or maybe is it a experiment from the government? I don't know, a hybrid or a chimera, something like that. What would you, in what category would you put it?
I think it has, excuse me if I get a drink. I think it has something to do with the UFOs because it was right there. It was right there.
Yeah, you've seen it.
I still get excuse me.
Along with the UFO, right? Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But I also think it is in the category of interdimensional, and I think it can manifest itself into something else. I think it has ability, not necessarily like a skinwalker, but I think it has the ability to change the way it looks, because that second ball of light, I would bet that was an entity of some form. And I thought that from the first time when I saw it, I thought that. And I had never read about that or heard about that some people think those balls of light are actually alive. I actually think that was that creature that come in looking for us. Mm-hmm. And it saw us, and the woman that did my regression, she said, I really like for you to come back because I think there's a lot more that you went through that you, and I said, you know what? I said, I don't know whether I can handle it. And that was in 2017. So it's been a few years since I did that. I don't know if I want to know anymore or not. All I do know is it had hold of me. It could have hurt me, and it didn't. If anything, it helped me, I think. it kept me from going back down there. I didn't want to go back to Point Pleasant after, I had that dream and I had that experience. We used to go down there all the time and go across that bridge, and we'd sit on that silver bridge and watch that thing swing with us on it and think that it would swing till it went completely over. And we'd think how fun that would be, but how tragic it was that it broke, and what caused it, I don't know. But I think that those men in black had something to do with it, whether they knew it was going to happen or what happened. But I don't think the Mothman did. I just think, he was down there to warn. I also think that he might be some form of for what do you call it? Where you foresee the future and you try to keep somebody like a banshee, forewarning entity of some kind. But I do know that it was flesh and blood, or therefore it could not have picked me up.
Yeah.
Now I had a lot of trouble with that. I remembered everything. I had all those feelings and all that came to fore, and I had a lot to deal with for the past few years. I've come to terms with it, and a lot of it is through a group of people that have had the same experiences. I know of one couple that was riding in backwoods of just a couple years ago. It was about 3 p.m. in West Virginia, and they were on the back roads, and they came up on something that was laying in the middle of the road, kind of humped over, and they thought it was a deer or a bear or something. And when they got up close to it, it stood up and put its arms out and took off, and it was a winged entity.
Wow. Justin,
so
do you have
still around?
Taking all the space here, Justin. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting that you have the family medium going on.
Yes.
And I think maybe that might be a key factor of why he chose you and messed with you, because it seems like 2 different incidences that you saw this thing and you went somewhere else and it came back. Maybe it gravitates towards people who have more of an insight.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it opened up something inside of my mind, whether it's the pineal gland or the third eye, whatever you want to call it. I think we're all born with it, that ability. Some more than others, just like talents for art or music or anything like that. Right. Now, my daughter she has the abilities, but it kind of frightens her, and she's a teacher, so she kind of doesn't, but she uses it that way. And my son, he's starting to really come more open about it. And I think as I hit my 40s, I think it really skyrocketed. And I think after my kids grew up and I had more time to deal with it. Now I use it to help people.
That's awesome. And I can't forget one thing you said earlier. You said that you had the feeling that there was something uploaded into your mind, into your get a little bit deeper into that. What was it? What was uploaded to your mind? What happened?
It was like I had a knowing, like I had an understanding that this was almost like a calling. And here I am moving my hands like a Rubik's Cube. It's like somebody went in there and swept it out and put something else in. That's all I know how to. And it's like it wasn't that it made me any more intelligent, but it affected parts of my mind that helped to open up that ability.
Expanded your mind in some kind of way.
Expanded my mind. Now, I have done different things. I've done remote viewing just in the past year or so. And I've had some incredible results with that. But mostly, I am a Christian woman, and I have had trouble with this. So I talked to a lot of ministers about it. And they said it's called the power of discernment. So I pray that God helps me to be able to use that to help other people. And I can be out somewhere and I can pick up on somebody that is having something that they're struggling with. And I'm like radar. I go right to them and I'll say, I don't mean to be into your business, but do you have a moment that I can talk to you about what's bothering you or something like that? Now, my daughter, when she was younger, and I would do that, and I didn't do it a lot when my kids were young because embarrassed them, you know. But as she got older, now she goes, you go do your thing, Mom. I'll be over in the clothes. I'll go look at the groceries or something. But I went to Arizona, to Sedona, and that's a magical place. And I was up on the Red Rocks watching the sunset, and I saw a couple sitting there, and they looked happy. But he got up, and I was drawn to that girl. And I went over and I sat down. It's like a moth to light, is what I say. Ah. And I went over to her and I sat down and I said, you've just lost somebody very important to you. And she shook her head and I said, don't tell me, I'll tell you. I said, it was your mom, and you took this vacation so that you could try and get yourself together and realize, you know, why and where and when you're supposed to be. And I came up with her mother's name, grandmother's name, where they were from, when she died, what she died of. And I was like, she goes, you don't know how much you've helped me. And I said, every time I help somebody, it helps me to grow because it makes me feel good to be able to help. So I will never, I've asked God to, please don't, if there's anything bad, I don't want to know about it. But if I can keep something bad from happening, I'd like to. But that's what I got out of it. And I know it was from part of that somehow.
Yeah. Let's go way back in your story. When you told us in the beginning that you were just a little girl and you told us about dreams, maybe strange dreams, would you say that might have been out of body experiences or astral traveling, stuff like that?
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. And I've often wondered, I have dreamed, and I will, I know this sounds off the wall, but I feel like I spend time with my mother, who's been gone since 98, when I dream. It's just, you know, we're together and we talk, and even my pets. I had a big collie dog that I lost a few years back. I spent one whole evening just playing with him. And then when I come back into my body, it's like wham, and I almost jump out of the bed. And you know, it scares me and it wakes me up. But I always have that wham, like I'm falling. But it's an electrical like charge to your body. And I think we all have that ability. We just have to, I don't know. It seems like I always say my life for the last few years hasn't been real good because I went through a divorce and I went through a bad breakup. But I think the things that are bad that we go through that helps us to use every part of our emotions, we can turn that around to help ourselves and other people to be more open and to live more in the moment, live now in the now, and to enjoy life and to know how to express yourself.
Yeah. I did a podcast with this guy called Agi Nost. He's a very interesting guy. And he also said we're able to do stuff like that, like telepathy, telekinesis, or astral travel. And he says it starts somewhere in the universe. I don't know, somewhere it's
Yeah.
stored somewhere. We outsourced our abilities at some point in time, and we just have to learn how to get them back. I find that thought very interesting. I do not know how to get it back. I really don't know,
I
but it's
can
interesting.
I can tell you one way that the closer you live to the earth and the closer you live to nature, the more open that you will become. Go somewhere you've never been before. Go somewhere by yourself near water, like a waterfall or a creek, running water. Sit and just marvel at where we live and what our earth is like. I think that will draw you closer, and my relationship with God too. That helps, and I'm nothing without God helping me along. He's helped me. I don't know why, because I was a pill growing up. I was a different type of child. But like you say, when I was 3, I can remember when I was just a tiny, tiny baby that couldn't sit up. And I told my mom this, and she said, I remember being born. She was incredibly psychic.
Yeah.
But I was sitting in a storm drain, just a open water was coming off of the roof and it was raining. My mom was right there in the kitchen, and I was about 3 years old. And that's when I saw this woman come to me. And she was beautiful. She had a beautiful white dress on and black hair. Typical was what you would think. And she said that her name was Rachel, and you will remember me, she said. And I turned to look for her, I couldn't see her. And she put her hand out, and she had a ladybug in her hand, crawling around her hand. She said, give me your hand. And she put that ladybug in my hand. It crawled up my arm, I can remember. And she said, you are a special child. You will remember this. She said, come here, I want to show you something. And I couldn't ever see her, though, but she walked with me. She said, now look down in the ground right here in your backyard. And I looked down in the ground, and I could see under the ground. And it was like a big expanse under there. And I understood a lot when I was wee little. And all I could think of, I was raised in the church, and all I could think of was she was showing me hell, that I don't want to see that. She said, don't be afraid, just look under the ground. And I could see all these tunnels. I'm like, okay. And she said, you will remember this in a few years, and you will know this is true. And you'll love nature with the ladybug and everything. So I remember my mom called me then to come in. And of course, I didn't tell anybody this for years. I was about 12 years old, living in the same house. And it rained one night so hard, part of the riverbank collapsed. And it collapsed all the way up our driveway and partway into our backyard. They called the Army Corps of Engineers to come in to see what was going on. And they said that was coal mines, and it was all under our backyard. And that thought came to me again. Oh my gosh, she was showing me that. And now I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that that's who that was and what she was doing. But as I got older, I didn't want, because I thought I'm a witch, because kids would call me witch because they'd ask me things and I would tell them, and, Linda's a witch. Linda's a witch. So when you're a teenager, you don't want that kind of stuff. So, but I learned as I grew older that this was a gift and that we all have the ability.
Yeah. This guardian angel, you refer to her as Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever found out more about Rachel? Was it the ghost of a deceased or something like that? Do you know anything about her?
Only that she's still with me and will be until I pass away. There is in one of the books that I read, it tells you how to come in contact with your guardian angel, and it tells you to sit quietly and meditate and go down into a stairway, like down under the ground. And when you come out to a bench, which is overlooking a beautiful lake. And you go and you sit on the bench and you ask your guardian angel to come and sit with you. I did that meditation and she came in my mind. I saw her again. And I felt that she keeps me out of trouble, and she still does. But I don't really have that much interaction with her. They say your guardian angels will help you. But as far as Rachel in my family, like I said, I did my family tree, and a lot of them come from Germany. That's why I said on both sides of my family. But the shoemakers were they were Schumacher, that's their name, Schumacher.
Mm-hmm.
You familiar with that name?
Yes.
That's they were from the border of Switzerland and Germany, I think. And then when they came over here, that would have been my great grandparents, I think. But I knew my great grandma, Emma, but she died when I was 16. She was in her 90s. But I didn't really understand too much about my mother died when I was 48, I think. Yeah, I wasn't 50 years old yet. So I think that I was still starting to go through what I call it a transition. In your 40s, you really start becoming more mature and more open to that kind of reality, I think. So some people are younger, and some people just go through life until they get to a place in their life where they really get really interested in it, or they don't.
Mhm.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah, your life was very
and it goes
interesting.
on and on.
Yeah, it's going on and on. You're right. And your life was very interesting so far.
Mhm.
And I think we had a very valuable talk today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, what's happening out here is I have found that not only am I drawn to spirits, but I'm also drawn to other types of cryptids like Bigfoot. And I have that kind of stuff going on here, and other people that have been here. And my son has been here, and we've had knocks and whoops and tree structures and shadows and all that stuff. So we're interested in that stuff too. So, but
Yeah.
You should have been on our last talk. You'd have been perfect.
yeah.
That was awesome. Yeah, we were discussing some of the Bigfoot stories. But yeah, that was very intriguing.
I've seen it once. I've
Your
seen
story.
it once. And I've seen the footprints out here in my creek. We live in the foothills, and there's a creek behind my house. Like I said, anytime you're near water, you're going to be near supernatural or paranormal activity. I think it has something to do with it.
We'll keep that in mind next time we're near some water.
Okay, Linda,
Right.
please stay with us for 2 more minutes, okay?
Okay, well, it's been my pleasure talking to you. And thank you.